So guys, I'm going to start. Welcome to Ordinary Extraordinary. You guys could have been anywhere today on a Friday, but you decided to join us here today. So we're very grateful that you could come and listen to the topic that we have today. I am Towela Mokosa, I'll be your host, and I am joined by the lovely Busisiwe Mohoba. She's a career woman. She's currently in the financial services industry, and she has a background in accounting and education, and she's a mother of one, and she's also a wife. So thank you, Busisiwe, for co-hosting with me.
Thank you, Towela, for that introduction. I think, yes, we can start chatting, please, guys. Let's get engaging. This is more of a chat. We want it to be engaging. So from an engagement perspective, if you could just do your, post your thoughts or anything that stands out from your side in terms of things that pop out or nuggets that you are taking from the webinars we talk, that you will do there in the chat. And if you've got specific questions more related to our panelists, please put those in the Q&A. I think as people are logging in and starting to come through, if you could just tell us where you're logging from in the country or maybe even in the world, so we can just have an idea of who's interested on this topic too, and maybe even share what hooked you to come and join us tonight.
Lovely stuff. Another thing to note is we're broadcasting live on YouTube. We also have a Facebook page, Ordinary Extraordinary. Please check us out, click the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's what we would want. We also want to say that this webinar is sponsored by Biotechnologies Africa. We don't do this for monetary gain. We actually do it so that people can actually come, get inspired, get motivated, get some nuggets that they can go back and try and implement in the workplace or in your organizations. I just want to say that from last week, we spoke to some women who were working in a male-dominated industry, and there were some interesting insights that came on. And one of them was more around the perceptions that men have of women in the workplace. So we decided to say, today we're gonna speak to the men, almost like a right of reply. Not all men are trash people. There are some good guys out there. And we've got some extraordinary men here today who are all about women empowerment. So Busi, maybe if you could just please introduce our guests.
Okay, I'll start with Harry. Harry Mokabane is a husband, a father of 4. His best moments are quiet moments spent at home with the family. I'm a bit wary about this quiet moment with 4 kids, but yes, he loves his quiet moments with his family at home. He has a sizable collection. He loves to read. He's a bookworm, mainly in politics. Loves a good debate. He also has an interest in technology. So some of his books that he has are in technology. He's from a work perspective, he's a power plant engineer, 18 years in the industry. And he's led multidisciplinary teams on various projects, on plant refurbishments, process optimization, and performance improvement. He believes you can unlock human potential by changing people's perspective. And that's Harry. Maybe Harry, you can say hi.
Harry, just say hi for us.
Hi everyone. Hi Toa and hi Busi. I think I've seen Brett and Thabiso. Yeah.
Yes.
and I'm glad to be here.
Are you glad to be here?
Uh,
on the 4 kids and quiet time.
well, today I had to sit in my study, so yeah. So the big sister made sure that nobody comes knocking here.
Ah, would have been a poll that is running. So for now, those who are listening in, you can just in the meantime complete the poll, and we will probably start the poll. I mean the conversation just after the poll results. Toela is supposed to be sharing why we do this webinar, the reason coming from how it emanated, and I would like to leave it to her. But for the sake of time, I think if we could just probably start with an introduction of a question introduction, which is to the panelists, to all panelists, to maybe give us an explanation of what is your definition of women empowerment, if we're looking at today's topic.
Hi,
Great,
hi
if you want.
everyone. Hi, Busisiwe.
Hi, Zoela.
Hi, I'm back.
Are you
Sorry
back?
about that. I just dropped.
I was just about to start with the panelists to do the definition. However, I would like to still give you the opportunity to just explain the reason for why we have these seminars, webinars.
Okay, so sorry about that, everybody. Just to quickly go into it, the whole purpose of the webinar is for us to hear from other leaders out there, especially the ones that we find in our networks, so that they can come and share their own experiences with you guys, so that you can go back into your organizations, into your areas of work, and try and implement what has been shared. So today we're talking about men who empower women. So we just want to hear men's side of the story, to say, let them come into the conversation. Women are always talking about women empowerment, but let the men also come into the conversation. Like I said earlier on, we've got a very dynamic panel today, and they're all about women empowerment. I don't know, when I dropped off, I was about to introduce Brett.
Brett
And
did a
Brett,
very good introduction of himself. So
oh,
he's
okay, lovely. So for example, Brett he's been raised by a dynamic woman. He's married to a very independent woman, and he's got a daughter. So he's all about women empowerment. So as Busisiwe said, what is your definition of women empowerment? And I'd like to probably start with you, Brett, if you could just enlighten us.
Okay, so I think that I've been thinking about this topic, actually, just the definition for me, and I used to think that it was about equality, right? It was about women being able to have the same opportunities, the same privileges, the same experiences as a man would have, right? But I'm starting to think that perhaps there needs to be more work done, right? Because if women have been disadvantaged in the past, then they need a leg up, right? They need a little bit more of a step up. So for me, empowerment for women really becomes, how do we create more opportunities for women than the common or garden man would have, because they've been deprived of that in the past. So how can we really create even more opportunity for women to be at the forefront of public service, of business, of whichever aspect they want to really fulfill in their lives? How do we create those opportunities for women? And that for me is what empowerment is.
How to create opportunities for women. All right. And Thabiso, what are your thoughts? What's your definition?
So I think for me, for the fact that we're having this conversation of women empowerment, we must acknowledge that actually women have been disempowered in the first place. And so for us, for me at least, it is about making right. And women empowerment is about making right what we have done wrong in terms of women disempowerment. And that is just by making sure that women are treated as normal human beings, you know, because they are that. They're normal human beings, just like everybody else is a normal human being. So why should there be special rules or special views for men than for women? So it's just about making sure that the playing field is absolutely level. And I think to get the playing field level at this stage, what men need to do is actually take a little bit of a backseat and listen more.
Nice, interesting. Taking a back seat, very interesting on that one. Like my husband is today in the background, taking a back seat.
I like that. I think that's not a bad move. It's your time to
Harry.
shine, for sure.
Harry, what's your definition?
Okay. Now I approach the topic from my experience, right? So my experience is heavy industry, an environment where previously, you know, there were no women at all, except in the admin office. And I joined industry at a time when it was just opening up, you know, and to discover that actually this place was not made for women. And
elaborate on that, Harry. Not made for women. What do you mean?
And I'll give examples, you know, practical examples. You know, we happened once to be looking at, you know, floor plans of the
We lose Harry.
the whole plant. And we actually discovered that in the actual plant, there were no toilets, right? There were no toilets for women before I joined. And so most women basically had to walk from wherever they'll be to this one single toilet. In some cases, some had to actually walk. I see I've got a unstable connection there. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
we
Harry.
like you, Harry.
In some cases, women had to walk 5 minutes or 8 minutes, you know, just to visit the bathroom. And a typical, and at a more now functional level, there will be a lot of tasks that are performed where when a woman performs the same task, they struggle, right? But what will then happen is, instead of the men now sitting and reviewing the task, how the task is done, the tools that are used, they'll instead blame the woman that, but you are not supposed to be here in the first place. This is proof that you're not supposed to be here. And actually realized right there that as men, we need to think differently about this thing. About things, because there are practices in industry which were designed over many years, but were designed by men and for men. So we need to review a lot of these practices. If we designed it tool that worked for us, men, design the tool instead of blaming the woman. So for me, empowerment, women empowerment became when a woman enters such an industry, she must never see a need to change.
Absolutely.
She must stay a woman, and the environment must change for her. And it's for us men to actually change the environment for the woman. And for
I
me,
like
that's
that.
empowerment.
I like that. Absolutely.
I like that. So men must change the environment
For the woman, yes.
for women. So maybe my next question, I'll try and target it at Thabiso. Thabiso, with regards to work and at home, how can men practically change those environments to empower women, in your opinion?
So I think for me, and let me start with the home front. I think the home front is about making sure that we take away those stereotypical roles that were said to have to be done by women. And for me, that's the first part. As soon as we can start doing that, then we will see as men that actually any role that is there can be done by other parties, except for breastfeeding, of course. I don't know if I can breastfeed. I don't think I can breastfeed. I know I can breastfeed.
You don't think, you haven't tried.
No, I know for sure. So I think if we can start there at home, knowing that the roles that are there can be done by either party. It doesn't matter who you are. You can do the roles. I, as a man, can cook. I, as a man, can take care of my kids. And by the way, I've got 4 kids as well. I can also change diapers for the kids. I can also give my kids a bottle. I can do whatever needs to be done by women. And that's the first part. Then when it comes into the workspace, if the premise is that any role can be done by either a woman or a man, then we won't be saying in the workplace that this role is for a man, this role is for a woman. Because already from home, our normal day-to-day life is that we all do the same thing.
Interesting. Brett, in your experience, what are some of the practical things that men can do to create enabling environments for women to be empowered?
Well, maybe I could just kick off and just reiterate what Thabiso said. It absolutely has to start at home, right? We can't be superficial or hypocritical. You can't be the man that goes to work and preaches about equality, for women and giving opportunities for women, and then go back home and live out those stereotypes, of oppressing or your wife must be submissive or must be beneath you. It must be lived at home. It must be lived in all of our walks of life. When we do take it to work, though, there's many things that men can do. We can mentor women, mentor men, really, have conversations with men, talk about it, understand where their heads are at and why they believe that there should or shouldn't be equality, and to start to really champion the change. That really needs to be what happens. So, you talk about people being woke, right? So those men that are woke need to go out there and talk to other men about it. Talk to women. Yeah, talk to women in the workplace and say, how's your experience been? Have you experienced any, persecution or judgment because you're a woman? Let's discuss it. Let's talk about how we can improve the work environment. I think one of the really important things as well, if I can just add, is just we can't accept discrimination, right? So if you're a man that believes in equality and believes in fairness and believes in the abilities of women, you can't accept discrimination. So when it happens, you need to stand up against it immediately, right? Because what you allow to happen is what you're condoning. So if you allow the sort of persecution to happen, or if you allow the inequalities to continue, you're approving it. By allowing it, you're approving it.
No, if I can just come in there, Tawela, I think I'm liking what I'm hearing, and it almost also sounds like if we have to have some kind of a change, whether in the workplace or at home, it has to be intentional. What are your thoughts on this? Is it something that we can't just expect it to be? However, putting things in place and let it be an intentional thing to say, I'm going to maybe at work look for such opportunities to empower women, or certain things like that. What are your thoughts on that? Harry, you can take it if you want.
I think, yeah, it's got to be intentional. You've got to be deliberate about it. It cannot just happen, especially at home. You know, at home is that environment where you are settled, and I guess also to some extent less I'm judgmental. You know, because this is my wife. So you've got to really think hard about it, that this person is actually an equal partner in this. She's got dreams and aspirations. I'll make an example. When I just gotten married, you know, when we decided on which car to buy, I mean, I thought, no, my wife really never thinks about those things, so I'll choose the car and we'll just go by. And up until I actually discovered that she's got a dream car too. I thought it was only me. So when you reach that point, you actually realize that my wife's got dreams and aspirations in many things. You know, she doesn't just wish for a big kitchen that's got all of those, you know, equipment that's used in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But she also has dreams and aspirations in other things. And when you are listening, when you are, you know, observant and present, you know, you are able to actually pick on those things and actually reflect also on some of your assumptions about your partner, I mean, in the home. So it cannot just happen. You've got to actually be deliberate about it. Same. I mean, in the workplace, you know, workplace even worse, because there it's, you know, you have men we together. We are in the majority in most cases, especially in my environment, and men. You know, men where 5-6 men are gathered together, oh, trouble! I can promise you, because men normally we don't call each other to order in many things. So you've got to change the tune and make them aware that these women, they are also well, some of them, right? They are wives to husbands at home. They are mothers, right? They could be our mothers. So let's think about them as having the same dreams and aspirations that we as men here have as well. And we've got to make an environment that is you know, welcoming for them, an environment that is easy for them, right? In as much as we find this environment easy to work with, we should actually make them the same for them and not just hope that it will happen. We've got to be deliberate about it.
Be the change you want to see. Love that.
Yes, exactly.
So on the screen, there are some perceptions that men typically have. Not all men, and not the men on this panel, but what some men have of women in the workplace. So I'll just read out a few, and then I would like maybe Thabiso to just comment on the perceptions men have. So one perception is she's just a BE candidate, she doesn't know much. Women don't apply their values in the workplace. Women are easy to overrule because they don't stand their ground and are too emotional. Women need to speak up more. So these are just some of the perceptions that men have of women. Thabiso, how were you able to break some of these stereotypes?
So I think just addressing some of the stereotypes, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial here and maybe take a little bit of flack. So with some of these stereotypes, I think some of the stereotypes are true, but the caveat here is I think they are true because us men have created them, and then the women have, to a certain extent, accepted them, and it's created almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So for example, the one that says women need to speak up more. I think when women have tried to speak up, us as men in the boardrooms have not taken their views or shut them down. And hence next time when the time or the opportunity comes for women to speak up, they don't, because of the experience and what they have, what they have experienced in the past and what men have done in the past. So I think there is a level of self-fulfilling prophecy there. What I think needs to happen now is for us to actually intentionally give the opportunities, open up the communication channels, and make sure that women have a voice, and make sure that we listen more. I think us as men don't listen as much as we should, and we need to listen more to what women say, and also maybe ask more questions to try and understand where the women are coming from, instead of just shutting down their points without knowing exactly what they are trying to convey to us. So I think we need to listen more, and what I've tried to do is just to listen a little bit more, talk a little bit less, and try and hear where the views are coming from, and what the perceptions are, and also working on myself and what my own stereotypes have been, and making sure that I try and get rid of those.
Brett, as a coach, Thabiso mentioned listening more. How would you advise men, or if you're in a coaching session, what are some of the tips that you would give a man for him to listen more and not actually give solutions to the problem?
I'm chuckling because it's been the hardest thing for me to do, right? I came out of an environment, at least a work environment, where I was expected to have the answers. I was expected to give instruction. I was expected to have an opinion, right? Creating that safe space is what we need to do. And that safe space really is about listening. Thabiso said it perfectly. We need to listen. We need to learn. We need to create a space where there's no judgment. I think that's really important. If you can interact with people, man, woman, child, whatever, in a space where there's no judgment, that's when you can really get to know somebody. That's where you can really find out what that person's values are, what that person's visions are, their dreams, help them to achieve those dreams and objectives that they have and their goals. You can't do that with judgment, right? And stereotypes and judgment go hand in hand. We need to release ourselves from those judgments, take our time to listen, to learn, and to understand. And that's the only way that we can do it.
Great stuff.
Great. Yeah. Should we maybe go to the? Let's see it. Yeah. I was actually looking at what one of the participants has. They're talking about the voice of a woman being perhaps different to what is expected from a male-dominated environment. And I think it also speaks to what the panelists have covered, to say that sometimes when you speak, I think it was Thabiso, sometimes when you speak or when you speak up, you are not perceived the same as a man. You know, you're probably, from a man, it might be he's being bold, and then from your perspective, it might be she's whining, you know, she's always talking, and then they probably say, watch that one, try and keep her mouth shut or something. So it's kind of perceived in a different way in the work environment. Harry, maybe if you can, if you have an example of when that could have happened at work, where a woman probably spoke up, same as a man could have spoken up, but it was taken differently, and maybe how you might have intervened in that situation.
Okay, I will actually talk about a case my wife told me about so she, in her environment, managers are called soups, superintendents. So she one day did a walk around and she didn't like the housekeeping, and then she ended up in the male change rooms. This is now after hours. But she knew that the men, they like had a sticker on the door to say, no woman has entered this place like in the past 20 years. And yeah, so she decided to go in when there was nobody after hours. And she didn't like what she saw there. But then she still had to talk to her team and say, guys, you need to fix the mess in a change room. Without necessarily telling them that I've been there. And it was quite an interesting one because, so she basically called the team of supervisors, and because she knew if she was to tell them she went in there, they would actually take offense. So she said to them, one of you send me pictures about your change rooms, and I didn't like what I saw there. So don't make me want to go in there, right? So I'm gonna tell you now to go and tell your staff to fix the mess there. Because otherwise it will make me wanna go in there. And since you're proud that no woman has ever entered this change room in the past 20 years, don't make me the first one. And it happened that I think a couple of days later, the general manager of the plant now, came around and did a plant walk. And later in their meeting, she actually remarked about how tidy, the men's locker room in that plant, in her plant was. So she achieved a goal. She could have been bossy about it. I'll tell you how I do it, I practically walk in there and I call them straight away, I call them from the plant to come sort out their mess while standing there. So, and they accept it because I'm a man, right? Yes. But as a woman manager or supervisor in such an environment, you may not be able to do the same thing. So you actually have to look at other ways to achieve the same using other means. Yeah. So I think for me that was quite interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a topic that I would like us to talk about that actually stemmed off from last week. And this was around sexism and sexual harassment in the workplace. So maybe what is your view on sexual harassment in the workplace, especially with trying to empower women's rights to speak out about certain things? What would you advise another man or to when it comes to how to handle sexual harassment in the workplace so that it kind of doesn't disempower a woman? Maybe Brett, your experience in the workplace?
So, from my experiences, sexual harassment or harassment of any kind in the workplace is really such a taboo topic, right? And so taboo that people don't want to be trained on it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to be counseled about it. And that's the perception that needs to be changed, right? Because if it becomes something that we are comfortable speaking about to a peer or a colleague, and when I say speaking about it, not ahead of an incident, okay? So if, for instance, it's something we talk about as a team and we talk about, okay, so what is harassment? What would be considered harassment? because the lines are different for everybody, right? So for one person, the line is here, and we say, okay, this is harassment for me. And for another person, it might be something even more subtle. So we need to understand that there are different nuances. And we need to bring these things up and discuss them openly, you know? So I'd encourage women to chat amongst themselves, chat to their supervisors, chat to other males and colleagues in the office, and understand where those different nuances are. Make it something that's not a taboo topic that people shy away and don't want to even, oh, you mentioned harassment. Well, okay, well, where's HR? You know, that's what people do. They get really, really in a state, and they don't even want to talk about it in any way, shape, or form. So let's start talking about it more often. Let's understand, okay, where is that line? You know, what would you consider to be something that is harassment? Have I ever said something or done anything? You know, so start to understand that. Because a lot of the time, we're not aware. You know, my line might be here, and your line might be there, and I've done something that would have offended or even be classified perhaps as harassment, and I don't know because my line is not there, right? So we need to understand where we are, and just be more comfortable with having those discussions.
A lot of the women talked about the innuendos that are passed, the catcalling, and this is all in the workplace, inappropriate comments about dress code. So that's those were some of the nuances that came out from the discussion. Thabiso, your thoughts on sexual harassment in the workplace and what men can do to address it? Yeah. Maybe advice for other men?
Yeah, so I think men need to call each other out on these things. So if one guy hears or sees another guy doing these things, we just need to call it out straight up. Fortunately for me, most of my workplaces are dominated by women. So we don't see too much of it. But I think one thing that definitely needs to happen is that guys need to be called out on it. And I think we will be doing women a disfavor if we as men who are aware of these things to let it go. If we let it go, we are complicit, in my view. So we just have to call guys out on it and make sure that it doesn't happen. But I think also, you know, there are some, and Brett just mentioned it now, there's some, there is some harassment that is obvious, and there is some that is very subtle. And sometimes I find that unintentionally, guys may have done these things without themselves being aware of it. And I think that perhaps we should make the channels open for us to be able, for women to be able to say, hey, this was actually uncalled for. This was for me very offensive. This was inappropriate. This was offensive for me. And then we must call the guys out on it.
Absolutely.
I think two things there, you know, calling each other out, something that men find very hard to do. And I think if there's one thing that men must change, is that we need to start calling each other out. But then the employer can also help, because I can tell you, for most men, they struggle with what Brett called the line. You know, where is the line?
Yes.
And by the time that is sort of like established, you know, people have already been offended and sitting in disciplinary hearings. I think the employer can go a long way in actually training men about this, and not just assume that, no, as people interact, I mean, they will find each other. And so the employer must actually train employees on where the line is. But I think another thing that can happen is that women in the workplace should also support each other in some of these efforts. You see, especially in establishing the line, you know, where is the line? I was involved in a sexual harassment investigation, in one of our plants, and you know, it was a very interesting encounter, because you know, I went through the whole investigation. So here I discovered that there's this 50 plus male who basically goes around, he says he's giving some love, right? But he goes around hugging all women. So here I come and we start the investigation. And then I hear the story about hugging all women, giving some love and all of that. And I had to interview, I think, about, because there was an anonymous complaint. So the bosses wanted to find out. So, you know, they said, look, Harry will be there, so you can go in your own time and go talk to him. And a strange thing emerged from there, that the majority of women found nothing wrong with what this guy was doing. This guy who was giving some love, you know. The problem was, one day, whilst he was giving some love, he hugged a lady, or he forced himself on a lady, you know, who was pregnant, and this lady didn't take it kindly, and basically that's where the problem started. But then, when I dug further, you know, during the investigation, I found that most of the ladies who came and said they found nothing wrong with what this gentleman was doing, you know, giving some love. They were his intents, as in he's like a training coordinator, and they were, you know, when they joined the place, you know, that's basically the person who trained them. Yeah. And well, I mean, I sat there baffled that, goodness. So all of them do not see that they were actually groomed into this thing. I mean, how would you go around hugging all women in a place where you have like 500-600 people working there? That is totally wrong. But because when they joined the environment, right, he groomed them all this time doing this sharing love thing. They gotten used to it, to a point where they don't see anything wrong with it, right? When this one colleague now found something wrong with it, they said, she's overreacting. And I just thought, goodness, I think that's one of the problems that women in some environments have come to actually accept what they should not accept. And in the process, they fail to support those who take a stand instead of supporting.
I think it kind of takes down the voice of a woman now. You try and speak up in that environment, and everyone else is saying you're overreacting. And coming from women.
And
so we probably also have a role to play in that sense.
No, definitely. I think the whole women empowerment thing is not solely on the men. We as women also have a role to play. And when we see such injustices happening to our own, we should also speak up and support the women who come out and complain about being disempowered, or so I think it's both men and women have the opportunity to empower women. It's on both of us.
And I think it also comes from everyone who has that position of influence, but then obviously you can also influence from to the left and to the right of you. So everyone needs to stand up. If it's not right, speak up about it. I think those are one of the.
So, gentlemen, what would your advice then be for how should women fight to survive in a man's world? because it sounds like this is a man's world. The workplace was designed for a man. So what advice can you give us to fight in or survive in this man's world? Thabiso.
Putting me in the spot here. Look, I mean, I think for me, women must speak up, and yeah, I think women need to speak up, even when it's difficult, and most of the time it's going to be difficult for women to speak up, but women need to speak up. But then us as men, also, and especially the so-called woke men, need to be there. Helping to advocate for this thing, not fighting your battles for you, because I believe that is taboo. Also, women don't want their battles to be fought for, but just being in support of them. Maybe let me put it that way. So we need to support women who are speaking up, and also help carrying their voice where their voice has been shut down. But I can tell you, in a lot of workplaces where women have been disempowered, the women's voice will not be heard. So you can try and say whatever you want, it won't be heard unless a guy will say something. So us guys must say something to help a woman's voice being heard.
Very true. You know, very true that ultimately, yes, women have to fight, but this is a fight that it will not be won by women fighting alone.
Yes.
The men need to come in, and I think the few men who have caught on this, it is their responsibility to also make sure that their friends change, right? That their friends realize that the workplace has changed. We need to leave our grandfathers' ideas, behind us. The workplace has changed for the man and for the woman. So it is our responsibility as well to be in this fight. I would say something about women fighting that I've observed in the past 18 years working in the heavy industry environment is that at some point enters burnout, right? That women think, you know what, I've done this for 10 years, for 15 years, and I don't want to be here anymore. And they basically leave and join the big offices in the Sunning Hills and the Santans and those places, because they feel I have done my part. I came in here and I fought my way through, won some battles, lost some battles, but I think I've had enough, right? Now, it is for men to actually make sure that in as much as us men last in those environments for 25, 30, 45 years, that women also last as long as men last in that environment. It is our responsibility to actually ensure that. It's definitely not a fight that can be won by women alone.
Harry, I want to touch on, you mentioned something about we need to leave our grandfather's mentality behind. I just want to bring in the culture aspect of it, because there was a comment in the chat that said, my father judged me because I treated my wife equally. So what are those cultural challenges that we face, or mostly men, where you are trying to empower your wife, but you're seen as weak, or you get comments as petticoat government, It's happening. Like, so maybe that's another defense for the men to say, oh, look, I don't want to be called sissy. So I need to, show, I need to show that I'm a man. And as what Brett was saying, it starts at home. Whatever we do at home needs to be consistent and be the same in the workplace. So how do you manage those cultural dogmas. Maybe Brett, do you want to try and touch on that?
Yeah, I can try. I think it's probably going to be the toughest hurdle, right? And I think in a lot of ways, it's a root cause for the discrimination and for women not feeling empowered. And I think regardless of the culture that you come from, you know, black, white, whether you're from a Western civilization, Eastern, I think there's quite a lot of that, right? That's been bred into us, you know. I was quite lucky, you know. I grew up in a family where my mom, even though she was a stay-at-home mom, was on an equal footing to my father, right? They would both be the caregivers, both be the disciplinarians. I never felt like one was superior to the other. So I'm quite privileged, you know. I grew up with that thinking, and perhaps in that is the key. I grew up knowing that is okay for a woman and a man to be equal, and we've got to break those cycles, you know. So if my father was indoctrinating me into this cycle of women being inferior, it's up to me to stop it, right? It's up to me to teach my daughter, my child, my wife, that it's not the case. And I think it becomes harder and harder when generations don't have that confidence, aren't brave enough to stand up to the generation before and say, that's not okay, it's not right. And I'm not going to do that with my child. And I'm not going to do that with my wife. And I'm not going to go and perpetuate that in the workplace, right? It takes real courage to stand up to the man that raised you or the woman that raised you or whatever and say, I don't agree with that, I'm going to do it differently. But the more of us that perpetuate that and actually stand up for what we believe in and stand up for what we think is right and say, I'm going to do it differently. It's up to each one of us to take that stand. And only in doing that are we going to make this a new culture, right? That's the only way for us to do it.
Yeah.
Can I just add there also? I think we also have to define or change the definition of what a man is. Because previously, and from a cultural perspective, our culture is very, very patriarchal, especially as Black people, especially. And that has changed. I mean, my wife is a powerhouse at work, absolute powerhouse. So who am I for her to come home and say, no, you will do this, you will do that. But we are really in a partnership here in raising our children. And I don't want my kids and my daughters to live in a world where they feel that they're inferior to anybody. My kids must know that they are powerhouses in themselves. Just by being a Madiba, you're a powerhouse, and that's it. End of story. And so this definition of a man being breadwinner or a man being this or a man needs that needs to change. And I think that's for us as men. We have to make that change internally, because you know this whole pride thing will send us down the wrong rabbit hole. And we'll end up being the ones who are perpetuating these stereotypes, because our definition of being a man is one that's forged from the patriarchy of the past.
And to add in there, you know, that society does not learn that. I mean, in the environment where I grew up in, where, you know, during the migrant labor system, most men were gone to the mines and to the factories to work. And a lot of children, you know, were brought up by women at home, right? Well, not me specifically. I still had my father and my mother at home. But if you look at the number of people who were brought up by their mothers, single mothers, and their grandmothers, that number is by far the majority of us, right? Now, what this attests to is that women, if society was to invest more in women, you would actually end up with you know, the next generation of people who were basically better raised, you know, and groomed than the previous generation, I mean, the generation before them. Women those grandmothers, you know, they could raise a family with very little, right? With very little, but they could raise, you know, a family of 5, 6, 7, 8, and raise some of them, you know, to be our leaders today. I will make an example of a friend who made a post on Facebook during the week, during this past week. Professor Muzima Seko. Professor Muzima Seko is a professor in, you know, at medical school, at Vets Medical School, right? And he talks about the fact that his single mother was a cleaner there. She was a cleaner at Vets, right? And with the little that she got, she raised him to become a professor of medicine at Vets. Now, when I look at the return on investment, right, that you get by empowering a woman, I really wonder why society is not doing more of it. That women deliver much better results than us men.
Yes.
I mean, it's pretty obvious to me, at least. I don't know if I'm seeing it wrong, but I just think that really society needs to start investing in women, because women do a much better job, right, of bringing up the next generation, you know, with little. What if they were to even get more, right? I'm not saying us men don't have a role to play. We definitely do. But it really does look like, you know, women do it much better. So given a chance, we should actually divert more resources to empowering our women, because only that way can we actually raise a better next generation.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think maybe let's try and make it a little bit more practical, because I'm trying to figure out, let's say I am a woman and I'm that powerhouse. I'm coming into your organization. I think probably giving practical examples for the woman and the man, for men to recognize that that's an opportunity for empowerment. And for a woman, how do you actually make yourself be that opportunity for empowerment? If you have practical examples, it will even be better. Because I always find that some of these opportunities, some people are looking for something big, but it could be such a simple thing of just empowering someone in a certain situation, just because you are in a position of influence. One example will be that a boardroom situation where a woman comes in and starts talking and nobody listens. And for me, that will be an opportunity for a man to say, let me open up this space for this woman, so that her voice is not shut down forever. Give her that opportunity. It's small. It seems like, you know, linear. I mean, just give her an opportunity to speak. It seems small, but it actually, from that, it could step into something even bigger. Any examples from the panelists?
Well, I would say in a team, well, one of the things I've done myself is that, you know, when I go and leave, let the woman stand in for you, and let the team get used to, you know, their female colleague, you know, basically taking charge. And when you pick up that there is dissenting, you know, team members, address it directly. After a week on leave, when I come back and I hear that there's team members who are not cooperative for whatever reason, make sure that you address them and nicely. I think that is one way of actually introducing them to being led by a woman. You know, another thing that a lot of us men can do, if you ever happen to have a female boss, right? Because, you know, usually there's this adversarial relationship at work, or competition, you call it. Make a decision to actually support her, just for that reason. Right? That this woman, she's actually breaking barriers, right, for a lot of other women out there. So she needs to succeed. And I normally say, for my daughter's sake, she needs to succeed. Because if she succeeds, right, then the barrier there is broken for my girls.
You know, Harry, I was really lucky because I've actually had two women bosses in my career. And you know what I found was exceptional about both of them, right, is that they never tried to come into their role as a leader and try to be a male leader, right? They came in with all of the skills, attributes, abilities that make them exceptional in that role, right? And if we think about it, women have got a natural tendency to be, I mean, amazing listeners, far better than any of the three of us guys could ever hope to be, you know? They can build rapport, they're communicators. They have insights and intuition that we could never wish for, right? And these women use those sort of skills and those sort of aptitudes to lead their teams in a far better way than I was capable of doing at the time. You know, they were in those roles for all of the right reasons. And it wasn't the reasons that a male manager would have. It wasn't that skill set. It was a unique skill set. You know, so my advice to women is to bring yourself to work. Don't hide what makes you an amazing woman. Bring that into work, you know? And I think some advice for men, you know, perhaps if you're in those influential positions, if you're looking at hiring in people, you're looking at promotion, hide that top line on the CV. You know, the line that says CV of Brett Ferreira, CV of Joan Rivers, you know, or whatever it might be. Hide that first line, hide the sex, the name, the age, and look at the person's qualifications, look at their experience, don't ask to know whether the person is male, female, black, white. Look at the person's abilities and give the person that opportunity based on their capabilities and based on their performance, not based on whether they're a woman or a man. Ignore the top line.
I'd like us to go to the Q&A. There's some interesting questions that have come up in the Q&A, and I would like to get everyone's perspective. There's one question from Kanye Bluli. She asks, why do men struggle calling each other out?
It's a camaraderie thing, you know?
Yeah, the boys club, right? The boys club.
So
Or is it also about perception, maybe?
About?
What Tawela was saying, that sometimes because they're acting in a certain way, they might be called CC, because now you're treating your wife in a certain way, or, you know, could that also play a role?
Not really. I think there's just some unwritten rule.
Unwritten rule.
You know,
I'm sure a man wrote it down somewhere and it's just hidden it.
One of those things that you must just figure it out.
Yeah, they laugh about it.
So how do you guys, you know?
And that needs to change.
Yes.
I think, let me do it.
How do you break that cycle to call people out? Like, you know, not be afraid of breaking that unwritten rule.
Okay, I don't know if Brett wanna go. Or Thabiso.
You know, it's tough. It brings us back to those cultures, right? And you know, not even just our upbringing. You think about when you were at school and there was the boys' club, you know, and all the guys get together and talk about the girls, and it starts creating those sort of it's strange. It creates those kind of norms and accepted norms where, okay, the guys can get together and go and talk about the girls, and that's all fine, you know, and the girl can't come over here and talk with us. No, because we're judging you right now, you know. So it's really, really difficult for us to overcome. It really is, you know. I don't have the answer. I don't know. I don't know how we can get over it. It's really, it's bred into us in every bit of our society. You know, it just makes, what were we talking about? The woke men to try and work harder and harder, you know? When we're on at the golf club, when we're at the golf club, when we're at the cricket match, when we're at the soccer match, when we're at our kids' basketball games at school, we've got to just preach about this, you know, and make it less okay for these unwritten rules to carry on in our society. It's not okay.
Absolutely.
You know,
I've got a question for Thabiso. But anyway, if Thabiso feels like this. Thabiso, you touched on that women need to speak up and let their voices be heard. How come confidence from strong women is perceived as arrogant and it intimidates men in the workplace? I find that they get targeted and get put, and they get put in their place. Thus, the timid women many times climb up the ranks due to their softness.
Yeah, I mean, and I've written the response there, but I genuinely think that it literally is just a weakness in men, where we feel where there's an ego or a pride, you know, maybe stemming back from background to say, you know, women shall not say this, women shall not say this, a woman will not tell me what to do. And so, you know, when a woman speaks up, when a woman is your boss and she tells you to do something, the innate patriarchy that we've grown up with rises up, that pride rises up, saying, you know, she will not tell me this, she will not tell me that. And I think it's an absolute weakness that us guys have, and we just need to get over it. I actually think, and this is just having a conversation with my wife about the women who climb up the ranks, are actually those ones who almost assimilate to become like a man, as opposed to being timid. So from what I hear, a lot of the women who are then CEOs are so hard and have almost become like men and have not become themselves. They're not allowed to become themselves. And they've had to kind of like assimilate to the so-called man's world. And I think it's a problem, because then the women are not being themselves. And I think that we need a woman's touch and the way women think in our societies to make our corporates flourish a lot more than they are doing, to bring people together. Yeah, and I think we are failing in this area as guys, and we just need to improve on that front.
Thank you, Kelito Mokabane, for that question.
I just want to say, as we close out, I'm just looking at the time. I'll just like us to maybe just close the conversation. A lot of interesting insights have come out. I just want to get from each of you, what are the 3 things that you want men to take out from today's discussion, and women? So what is the one thing that men should stop doing? What is the one thing they should start doing, and what is the one thing that they should continue? So maybe Brett, you can start off by saying what is the one thing that men should start doing. Thabiso, maybe what men should stop doing, and then Harry, just to close it up, what is the one thing that men should continue doing? And then yeah, so Brett.
So if we think about what men should start doing, we need to start listening, right? And if we take the time to listen, we might learn something. You know, we need to learn more about women and what makes them different, what makes them unique from us, and what advantages that brings to our lives, both at home, at work, and in any scenario, right? We need to listen. We need to learn. and be curious, a little bit more curious. It's not going to make you less of a man to be curious and to listen.
Thabiso, what should men stop doing?
I think what we should stop doing is thinking that we are the end all and be all of life and decisions around either the home and corporate. And we should stop creating these biases around women and what they do and what they can do and what they can't do. So we need to stop saying a woman can't do this, a woman can't do that, and stop having these biases, you know? Yeah.
Thank you.
Harry?
I think one thing, we need to start reflecting more on our assumptions about about women. I think there's a lot of assumptions that we make as men, and we need to really think about things some more. You know, I will make an example. Now during the COVID lockdown, so we work in, I work in, my environment is essential service. So we had to go into work still. And at some point we found that it was mostly us men there. And then, and there we started complaining, you know, that where's our, you know, female colleagues. Yeah, but right there, I mean, I thought that, goodness, there's a good reason why they're not here. And why they cannot be here with us, right? That in most cases, you find that one partner had to stay home, whilst the other one goes to work because, you know, there are kids at home. And crash is closed, schools are closed, and all of that. And we had to send helpers home, you know.
Yeah.
And right there, you know, I basically just said, you know what, this is actually not something to complain about. So if anyone ever complains to me about this, you know, I'll set them right. And I mean, it's been what? It's been 3 months now, 4 months, and I've actually watched this closely, that a lot of them were still able to discharge their responsibilities effectively, despite the fact that their attendance, you know, they'll come twice or thrice a week, but they still manage to discharge their responsibilities. They attended to everything that they need to attend to. And I must say, I think COVID is really going to change the work environment. I think there's a lot of things that post-COVID, you know, are going to be. I wish they remain. So yeah. So men need to reflect more on the assumptions. There's a lot of wrong assumptions we make about women.
Can I just add?
Oh yes, Thabiso.
Can I add one last thing? Is when this COVID thing ends and we can have dinner parties and that, can I challenge all people, to all couples and people who are having these dinner parties, to have this conversation with all parties there? Because I think the first part or the start of these things changing is for us to talk about them. So, you know, these things shouldn't be taboo, you know, we must talk about them. And when we have our dinner parties with our wines there, when number one eventually opens up the alcohol, we must talk about this and talk about why our corporates are like this and what can we do personally. You know, we always try and defer to other people, but I'm not in this role, I'm not in that role. But what can you do personally in the space that you are in? Because at some level, we all have a level of influence in the spheres that we are in, and we should use that influence.
Absolutely.
Look, I just want to commend all you gentlemen that actually agreed to come on to the webinar, because a lot of people were uncomfortable with the topic on its own. So just the fact that you're here and you're willing to talk about it and actually take steps into empowering women kudos to you. We respect you. We appreciate you. And yeah. So just to end, guys, thanks so much for coming. I just want to tell you about next week's speakers. Next week on Ordinary Extraordinary, we've got 3 very interesting women, and we will be talking about how to successfully navigate corporate politics. Typically, people are, this is another topic people are afraid to talk about. But these ladies will be sharing insights on how to do it in a very ethical way, in a very friendly way, and how to do it right. So I can't wait. Niven Postma has written a book about it. If you're not doing politics, then politics will do you. And if you are a participant on the webinar, you can actually get the book at a discount, 20% off. There's the link. Maybe Dan, please put the link in the chat if people would like to go and grab themselves a book. Just use the discount code politics-NP and you'll get a discount. So I'm looking forward to next week's session. Thank you, my co-host Fusisiwe. Thank you for taking time out on a Friday night away from family. Thank you for joining us, and all the attendees who came today. We appreciate you. Thanks. Continue the conversations at home, as what Thabiso was saying. Even before the alcohol is agreed, just get together, Zoom chats.
It's actually the best part because
Let's talk
best
about
time
it.
to do it in October. Can't blame it on the book.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.